Welcome in, everybody. Today we're diving headfirst into the world of space domain awareness, or SDA. And to guide us, we're locked on to SDP 3100, the Space Force's own playbook.
It's not every day you come across a document that's basically a roadmap to a domain as crucial as space is becoming. And trust me, with all the activity up there these days, understanding this stuff is crucial.
All right, so let's break this down. Why is SDP 3100 such a big deal? I mean, we've had satellites for ages. What's changed?
It's the sheer volume of stuff up there now. We're not just talking about a few dozen satellites anymore. SDP 3100, it actually highlights that back in 2020, a single company, just one, got the green light to launch 42,000 satellites.
42,000? You're kidding.
Nope. It's just one company. And with that much traffic, the risk of something colliding, well, it skyrockets. In fact, the document, it actually says they're projecting a catastrophic collision every 5 to 10 years.
That's a pretty sobering thought. It's like trying to direct traffic in Times Square at rush hour, but with, objects traveling thousands of miles an hour.
Yeah.
And no traffic lights.
You're not wrong. And the stakes are enormous. We're not just talking about debris fields. We're talking about crippling our infrastructure down here, communications, GPS, you name it. And then there's the geopolitical tension that comes with it. It's a mess no one wants.
So it's not just knowing where things are. It's understanding what happens if they collide.
Exactly. And even more than that, it's about understanding the capabilities of everything up there. Who owns it? What can it do? And this is the big one. Are they acting, a little suspicious?
Sounds like we're going way beyond just, basic satellite tracking.
Oh, absolutely. SDP 3100, it's pushing for a total understanding of space. Think of it this way. It's the difference between knowing a car is on the road and knowing who's driving, where they're going, and what's in the trunk.
Okay, I like that analogy. So SDP 3100, it's pushing for a deeper, more complete understanding of the space domain.
Exactly. Space, it's not just a bunch of satellites floating around anymore. It's a complex playing field, and it's getting crowded. And we're talking national security, the economy, even the future of humanity here.
So we've got all this traffic to keep track of, figure out who's driving each of these things, what they might have in the trunk. But there's something else in this document, right?
Yeah.
SDP 3100, it talks about understanding the space environment itself. What's that all about? It's not like there's, weather in space.
Right. Well, about that, there kind of is. SDP 3100 calls it space weather. Says it can be just as disruptive as, a hurricane.
Okay, you got to elaborate on that. Space weather.
All right, so picture this. A solar flare erupting from the sun, this massive wave of charged particles, and it's headed straight for Earth. Or, how about this? A coronal mass ejection, basically a giant burst of plasma and magnetic field slamming right into our planet's magnetic field. That's space weather.
And that can mess with satellites.
Oh, yeah, big time. Remember a few years back when SpaceX launched all those Starlink satellites? And then, bam, a solar storm knocked a bunch of them right out of orbit.
Wow, yeah, I remember that. So space, I guess, it's not as empty and predictable as we tend to think. Huh. What do we do about space weather? Can we even predict it?
That's a major challenge, and SDP 3100, it hits on that. It stresses that we can't just track this stuff, we have to predict it. And on top of that, we need satellites and systems that can handle it. Think of designing a ship to survive a hurricane.
Makes sense. All right, so we've got traffic control, space weather, anything else we need to be aware of?
Well, might as well address the elephant in the room, or rather, the threat sharing our space lane. All the ways someone could mess with us up there. Adversarial activity.
Right. SDP 3100 doesn't shy away from the fact that space is getting crowded, and some folks might not be too friendly. What kind of threats are we talking about?
Think of it like this. Everything from jamming communications to blinding our satellites with lasers, even the possibility of anti-satellite weapons. ASATs is what they call them.
ESATs. Okay, that sounds serious.
They are. Those things are designed to knock out or even destroy our satellites. And we're not just talking military operations here. It could disrupt everything. Communications, GPS, financial markets even.
It's unsettling, thinking about a satellite just getting taken out. We depend on those things for so much, and it's not like we can just, call a tow truck.
And that's precisely why SDP 3100 really emphasizes deterrence, making it clear that messing with our stuff up there, it comes with consequences. And resilience, having backups, knowing how to operate even if something gets taken out.
So we're not just protecting what's up there, we're making sure we don't put all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Right. It's like, imagine a chess game. You wouldn't want all your pieces on one square, would you? You want options, different ways to defend, and you got to be ready if the game changes. That's space.
And that's where it seems like commercial space companies come in. SDP 3100, it talks a lot about partnering with the private sector.
Yeah, they're kind of a big deal these days. Those companies are launching new stuff all the time, coming up with wild new technology, and they're making space cheaper, more accessible, honestly. They're often the ones pushing the boundaries.
But doesn't that make us vulnerable? I mean, couldn't someone else use those same companies, those same technologies against us?
That's the question, isn't it? And SDP 3100 knows it. It admits there's a dual-use aspect to a lot of this commercial space stuff, but it says the key is finding ways to benefit from all that private sector energy without, handing the keys over to someone who might not have our best interests in mind.
Finding that balance is tricky, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk. We need that commercial drive, but not at the cost of security.
So as we're looking at SDP 3100, as we're really digging into space domain awareness, what's the big takeaway for our listeners, for those out there in the Space Force?
I'd say this, SDA, it's not just some technical thing, some box to check. It's the foundation for everything we do in space.
It's about understanding how everything fits, seeing the big picture, and never stopping learning. Because space, well, it's not getting any less complex.
You got it. Whether you're tracking objects, watching the space weather, or trying to figure out who's acting a little shady, your job matters. It keeps us safe, keeps us ahead of the curve.
Protecting our way of life, even if it is happening thousands of miles above our heads.
That's a good way to put it. And that mission, it's only going to get more important, more challenging in the years to come.
So to all our listeners out there, thank you. Thank you for your service, for what you do every day. And never stop asking questions. Never stop digging for answers. Because in space, knowledge, it's the most powerful tool we have.